Hello everyone, Helen here, and welcome to my podcast with a bit of a spooky and strange theme today. I hope you're all doing okay. Today I've got some knitting to show with you and some crochet, and I've got a strange story and a little visit to somewhere with quite a mysterious atmosphere. So generally nearly everything's in this theme for today, because when this first goes out it will be in the week that's got Halloween in it. And although I don't particularly celebrate Halloween, it's I'm just embracing the season, I think we shall say. And just before I show you the first thing that I want to share with you today, thank you for those of you who joined in the comments after last week's podcast about crochet hooks, because I was telling you that I'd had a problem with the, Clover and More crochet hooks, and the handles just started going sticky and I couldn't seem to clean them. And so there's been a little discussion in the comments of how some of you have had the same problem and some of you have tackled the problem. So thank you for that. I think somebody used baking soda or washing soda to clean the handles, which worked, and somebody else used alcohol, and somebody else had a special sticky stuff remover. And when I read that, I thought, oh, I've got some sticky stuff remover, why didn't I try that? So I haven't tried it yet, but I will do so, because I don't really want to have to throw away a whole load of crochet hooks just because they've got sticky handles. If the sticky stuff remover works that I've got, that'll be great. So thank you for that. So yes, today, first thing to show you is some knitting. And in last week's podcast, I shared with you my slight addiction to knitting the new Cynthia Valet pattern for the Nibbles Bunnies. And when I showed you last week, I'd made 4 of them, and I was on a 5th one, and I decided it really must stop there. When I finished the 5th one, I thought, no, I'm going to keep it at 5 and start making them some clothes. Except they haven't really got loads of clothes yet, because I got distracted onto another project, which is the second thing I'm going to show you today. Anyway, I'll come to that in a minute. Anyway, I've started to dress the bunnies, and I decided to start from their heads and go downwards. So 4 of them have got hats and one other item, and one poor little bunny is still waiting for something. I am in the middle of the 5th hat, but I haven't quite got it finished. So who have we got? First, the blue bunny, who is called Bryony. It's the first one that I made, and so I made her a little beanie hat and a shawl, which actually isn't part of the patterns that Cynthia Valet wrote, but I'd made 3 little scarves and decided I wanted to do something different. So Bryony got a shawl there. So that's Bryony, and that was just some leftover sock yarn. Then we have, the second bunny that I made, this pink one here, he's called Bobby, and he's still waiting for his hat. Then we've got this one here. This is Bertie, and Bertie has got a peaked cap and a little scarf, just an I-cord scarf. And again, this is some leftover sock yarn that I had. And then we have my newest bunny here, the little yellow one, and she's called Beatrice, and she's got a beanie hat as well and a scarf, and that's made out of some yarn that I had left over from the gloves that I've just made. So that's really lovely. So yeah, so this yarn came all the way from Wisconsin, didn't it? Yeah. And then finally, this purple bunny is called Bonnie, and she has got a beautiful beret and scarf, and they were made from some wool that was very kindly sent to me from New Zealand. So thank you, Shelley, for sending me that. And I got 3 mini skeins, and I'm going to use some of it for some of the other clothes as well. But there we go. So that's where we are with the bunnies and their clothes. And they're just patiently waiting for me to have time and stop making other things so I could get back to their clothes. Okay then, so the next thing to show you is, well, this doesn't come under spooky, I think, but it does come under slightly strange. And so it's something that I've made to take part in a challenge that's been running all of this year so far on lovely Pamela's podcast called Ginger Cat Crochet. And she has been running a challenge called By Hook or By Crook. And every 3 months she has chosen a book or film that has some kind of murder mystery crime aspect to it. So and the idea is that we've all read the book or watched a TV adaptation or whatever, and just made something. It could be anything. It could be crochet, knitting, or art, or embroidery. It was, any kind of craft that you could do that was inspired by that particular book or story. And the latest challenge is the film Gosford Park. So I watched the film, because it is just a film, not a book, and I was inspired mainly by the Ivor Novello character that appears in it, and he plays the piano. There's quite a bit of piano playing, so of course I was attracted to the piano playing in the film. It was a good film though. I liked, I really enjoyed this story. And anyway, so I decided I needed to do something piano related. So I had a look for some patterns that were to do with pianos. Anyway, I came across this pattern for Plinky the Piano, it was called. And here is my piano. So I'm saying this is strange because it is slightly strange to have a piano made into a character. He isn't called Plinky the Piano for me though. He's already become a friend to my piano pupils, the children that come, and he's been renamed Plinky. Plinky plonking on the piano. And yeah, so this is a pattern by somebody called Audrey Lillian, and it was a perfectly well written pattern. I think I bought it on Etsy actually, and yeah, it's really good. I enjoyed making him. It was quite fun making a piano into a character. You had to cut out some thick card for the shape of the piano, for the front and the back, and you had to insert it when you before you started stuffing it. Add some stuffing, sew the top part on, and then there's 2 bits of card in there. So it's not really a cuddly soft toy, this, but he sits beautifully on top of the piano, and he's got his eyes closed, not because he's asleep, but because he so loves listening to anybody who wants to come and play the piano that he sits on top of. And so he's so lovely. And if you fancy a bit of a challenge and you haven't already watched Pamela on Ginger Cat Crochet, then I do urge you to go across and go and visit her, and you might even be inspired to take part in the challenge. It's a really fun challenge. So there we go, Plinky with his slightly wonky black keys, by the way, I meant to say, because it was very difficult. You just had to embroider those on, they're not crocheted on. So they're a little bit wibbly, but nobody really minds. It's rather a nice little character, if a little strange. Okay, you sit down there. Oh yeah. Okay. So, and also related to piano, about a week ago or so, one of the children that came into piano lesson was was looking at the top of my piano, which already has some soft toys on that I use. They're not homemade ones, they're just soft toys that I use for teaching the children about different piano techniques. I'll not go into that now. I'll spend ages talking about that. But anyway, there's some soft toys in there, and then there's a whole load of my knitted gnomes sit on top of the piano. And this little girl that came in, she said, "Are you not going to decorate your piano for Halloween?" she said. And I said, "Oh, I hadn't really thought about doing that, but maybe I will when you come next week." So that set me off. And at the same time, I'd been watching Kaylee on channel, her YouTube channel. Oh, my mind's gone blank. I'll put it on the screen. And she had been, she did a few Vlogtobers, and she was sharing a pattern each day that was something to do with the season. And I was really, really taken with this pattern that she showed for a ghost. That was just a video tutorial on a podcast called No Catchy Name Crochet, I think it's called. And I thought, I have to make one of these ghosts. Well, it used chenille yarn, chunky chenille yarn, and I didn't have any because I've never ever used chenille yarn, believe it or not. So I sent off for some. It came very quickly, and I made my first ghost, which was the first one. This was you, wasn't it? And so here he is, this little ghost here. Well, I just fell in love with him, and I thought I can't just make one because I bought a great big ball of white chenille yarn. So I made another one, and then I made another one. Yeah, and actually when I got to the third one, I thought these are really quick to make. Actually, I think I used a 5mm hook, and it is pretty thick yarn. Much easier to work with than I had imagined. I'd never really been drawn to making things out of the chenille, but actually it was fine. I found it really fine. Yeah, so on the third ghost, I thought I'll time myself to see how long it takes to make one. And it actually takes me almost exactly an hour to make one. So, and I just think they're really lovely. I think on the tutorial, the eyes are embroidered and there's a bit of a mouth as well, but I'm okay with him just having two eyes there. So they're now sitting on top of the piano. And I decided also, when I'd ordered the chenille yarn, I ordered some other colours, and including orange. So I just made myself a little pumpkin friend as well. And just added some eyes. I didn't have a pattern for that, but I knew from making pumpkins before that all I needed was a long rectangle, and then I could sew it in and gather it at the top and bottom. And yes, and I had a bit of brown chenille for the stalk at the top. So he is now sitting on top of the piano. And then I was quite getting into this sort of spooky making. And I happened to notice, I think I might have noticed on Instagram in the first place, of a little pumpkin character that I really, really like the look of. He comes under strange and spooky, I think. And his name is Spindly Jack. And here he is. I absolutely love him. Now, he really is a bit strange. I know my mum won't like him. She hates things like this. But I think he is absolutely lovely. He's by the Pigeon's Nest, and it's a lovely pattern. It's really, some patterns that you buy are pages and pages long, and understandably, because, you know, they put in such a lot of detail with photos and things like that. But this was really clear and precise, and I think the pattern only covered about 3 pages. It was a bit of a nightmare to make the black parts. So I used Stylecraft Special DK for the black, and I had to make 8 separate fingers, which you then sew together afterwards onto the arms. And they were only a little circle of 3 stitches, and you had to go round and round. well, the most weirdly shaped fingers. I didn't do a great job of them really, but I thought it didn't matter really. It doesn't matter if he's a bit kind of misshapen, does it? You don't mind. And yes, and then and obviously having quite thin arms, fairly thin legs as well. I didn't even do too well with the legs because one leg is thicker than the other. So I don't know what was happening there. It was just because it was black yarn and it's just, you just can't really see the stitches very well. Anyway, his head was very straightforward to make, just in the orange. That's not Stylecraft. I don't know what it is. I'd lost the label from it. And then just a little bit of beigey colour for his collar and his stalk. And I've filled him with a bag of lentils, so he feels nice and weighty, sits nicely there. But, oh, I just think he's so cute. Really love him. I quite feel like making him a friend, although I'm not sure I would use black again. Anyway, great little pattern that if you want a nice little Halloween character. So there we go, you go and sit down there. And also to decorate the top of my piano, I bought some little ornaments as well. I'll show you a picture of them here with these tiny little ceramic ghosts. A big ghost holding a toadstool and a little one holding a tiny little pumpkin and a little toadstool guy as well. He's quite sort of spotty and speckled, but he has got a little face in there as well. So I think they're lovely. Bought them from, I think it's called Pottery by Isla. I'll put the name on the screen here. And she's actually, if you know Lucy from Lucy Locketland, she is Lucy's daughter, and she makes the most gorgeous ceramic things, which you can buy from Lucy Locketland's shop, or you can buy directly from Isla on her website. So I'll put links in the description box anyway. So yeah, so I think I'm all ready for Halloween, and the top of my piano has had the seal of approval from all the children that have been coming in this week or last week, and so yeah, so it's been a bit of fun as well. Okay then, so I think next I am going to show you a book that I bought. This is the most recent book that I've bought, an old book in my collection of children's books, or old children's books, and this one was published in 1966. But it's a story that is a very ancient one, a story that was first written down in the 12th century. It's a folk tale, a very mysterious folk tale that comes from Suffolk in East Anglia in England. And yeah, it's fascinating. I really, really love children's stories that are a bit kind of offbeat and quirky. And this is definitely one of them. So it's a story called The Green Children. And it's just been retold by somebody called Kevin Crossley Holland with some interesting illustrations that remind me of one or two books that I had when I was a child in the 60s. So yeah, so I'm going to read you from this story. I'm not going to read it word for word for the whole story, because it actually takes about half an hour to read it fully. So I'm reading some bits, and then I'm sort of telling you, sort of filling in bits of the story without reading the whole lot. And I'm going to show you some of the illustrations as well. So I hope you'll enjoy this strange story. I'm going to begin by reading you the author's note, telling you a little bit about the history of the story, and then I'll read you the story and come back again after that. The story of the Green Children is immensely old. It was first written down 700 years ago by Ralph of Coggeshall, and then by the chronicler William of Newbridge. But for hundreds of years before that, it was passed by word of mouth from grandfather to father to son, and no one would care to say how or where it all began. William of Newbridge set the story in the reign of King Stephen, and that is where we have set it too. But the idea of little people coming up out of the earth is far older than that. It is age-old, but each age claims it as its own. The Green Children by Kevin Crossley Holland, illustrated by Margaret Gordon. It is hot August, and Stephen de Blois is king, in the domain of one of his knights, Sir Richard de Cane, at St. Mary of the Wolf Pits in Suffolk. A strange thing is about to happen. Clack straightened his back, braced his aching shoulders, and glanced down the long, straight swathes of corn. Then, rubbing the back of his neck between his shoulder blades, he considered the position of the sun. But his stomach was his best clock. He filled his lungs, cupped a huge hand to his mouth, and bellowed, "Food!" The other cotters heard him. One by one they stopped work and mopped their brows. One by one they left their own strips of land and began to walk slowly towards him. And so the cotters decide to take shelter under the elms to eat their lunch. And as they approached the elms, Clack shouted out, "Look! Look! Look there! Follow me!" And he started to run towards the wolf pits. And there, huddling in the hollow of the largest pit, the cotters saw what Clack had seen, 2 green children. Their skin was green, their hair was green, they wore green clothes. And one was a boy and the other was a girl. For a moment nobody moved, nobody spoke. The cotters looked down at the green children, and the green children looked up at the cotters. The cotters crowded to the edge of the pit, watching breathlessly. If one man had moved, the rest would have toppled headlong down. The boy and the girl were clutching one another, looking up at the 9 men fearfully. And then, quite unexpectedly, the green girl buried her face in her hands and began to sob. And then, of course, the workers decide they need to show some kindness towards the 2 green children. They speak to the children, but the children give no reply, and so they offer them some drink and some food. In no time the cotters were pouring down into the pit, bringing the food with them. They swarmed round the children, their superstition at last overcome by curiosity. "Here, give me the flitch," said Clack. Swain passed it to him. Clack sniffed at it, then showed it to the 2 children. But however hard they try, the children won't take any food or drink from them. And so they decide they need to take the children to Sir Richard. So the cotters escorted the children to the manor of Sir Richard de Cane. The fortified manor was surrounded by a moat. Clack strode to the brink and shouted to the guards on the other side. The guards conferred, then let the drawbridge down. The little group, with the children in their midst, walked across and on into the great hall. Inside the hall, out of the sunlight, the children looked about them with great curiosity. They ran to and fro, exclaiming in wonder at the huge stone fireplace, the narrow window slits, the yellow rushes on the floor. They chatted excitedly, and for a moment even forgot their hunger. "Green children," boomed a voice at the entrance to the hall. "What's all this?" The cotters swung round, and there, hands on hips, stood Sir Richard de Cane, an enormous pot-bellied man. He was staring at the green children, open-mouthed. And so Clack explains how they discovered the green children at the wolf pits. Sir Richard liked problems. He enjoyed solving them. But green children, green as grass, who couldn't speak English, who wouldn't eat apples, that was another thing altogether. "All right, sit them down." Then walking to the entrance of the hall, he shouted at the top of his voice, "Food! Food!" And in no time a servant bustled in, bearing part of a chicken on a platter. A second followed, carrying a bunch of succulent black grapes. And a third brought a pitcher of red wine. But the children refused the food and drink that was offered to them, and so more was sent for, and they refused again. At this moment it so happened that an old servant was crossing the far end of the hall. In his arms he carried a pile of freshly cut beans, still attached to their stalks. Seeing the beans, the green children cried out with delight. They leapt up from the bench and ran towards the old man, who was so startled at the sight of them that he threw down the beans on the spot. The children fell upon the pile, and so at last the green children began to eat. The cotters stood watching them. "I see," said Sir Richard eventually. "I see. Green children, green food." And so the green children are allowed to stay with Sir Richard, and his priest teaches them English, and they eat nothing but green beans. And so the months went by, and soon autumn came. During the cold days of November, the green boy became listless. He refused his beans. He made little progress in his work. He lost interest in playing games, and nothing his sister said could cheer him. Nobody could say what was wrong with him. Father John was anxious. He made the green boy eat mugwort and mayweed, crabapple, thyme and fennel. He sent to Bury for water from the well of Our Lady. He offered prayers. It was all to no avail. One dark day, when the ground was like iron underfoot, and the shifting skies were grey, the green boy threw up his hands and died. Throughout the long hard winter his sister could not be consoled. Often she wept. It was so cold the tears froze on her cheeks. But at last, as spring threw off winter, she too threw off her grief. The crocuses flowered. And very soon the girl learns enough English to be able to explain where it was that she and her brother came from and how they came to be there in Wolf Pit. And it turns out that they were out in the field looking after the sheep and heard the sound of bells. They followed the sound of the bells until they came to a cave. The bells seemed to be coming from inside the cave, so they crept inside and eventually ended up in a very bright and different place to the land that they'd come from. And as the story goes on, the little girl grows up and she gets married and leaves the people of Wolf Pit, although occasionally comes back to visit them. How then did it end? What became of the girl who climbed up from the green land? All this happened years and years ago, 800 years ago. Some things live longer than centuries, others do not. We know much about the green girl, but there is much we do not know. And nobody knows, unless you do, whether the green girl lived on earth to the end of her days, or whether one day, near the wolf pits, she simply disappeared. So there we go. Very interesting, isn't it? I'm just fascinated, and I have been doing a bit more research about this story, and it is very, very interesting. So I'm going to finish off today by taking you just on a little visit that we made last time we were in Yorkshire. Not last time Phil and I were in Yorkshire. And this is an abbey that we'd never been to before. And I'm including it today because it just was really, really atmospheric. So it's not spooky, although it could be in the dark, obviously, but it's strange in an unusual way and in a sort of, it's got a very mysterious atmosphere to it because it's unusual in that it's privately owned. So unlike a National Trust property or English heritage or something like that, it's not been highly cleaned and, it's just natural. It's just been left for all of the wilderness to grow around it. So it's a bit of a different experience going around it. So yeah, let's go off to have a little wander around Jervaulx Abbey. Well, it's nearly time for me to say goodbye now, but I've got one last little thing, a little surprise giveaway. So it happened because I was at my mum's recently and we were really appreciating something, which was actually a gift that I'd given her ages ago, and it's one of those window stickers where when the sun shines through it leaves lovely rainbow patterns on your walls. And I was saying to her, oh, do you know, I wish I had one of those myself. I'd like to have one on the craft room window. So I went off looking online and couldn't find the same one, but I did find quite a few. And when I came across this one that said, be kind to yourself, I thought, oh, that's perfect. That's just made for me. So I ordered one, but I also thought, that would be really good as a little giveaway gift, given my recent 200th episode, which was all about kindness and about being kind to yourself. So I ordered 3 extras. So if you would like to be put into the prize draw for one of those window rainbow maker stickers, then leave a comment below and include the word surprise. And then when I do the YouTube random name picker, it'll pick out all the comments which has got the word surprise in it. And and then 3 of you, I'll send them anywhere at all. They're very lightweight, and I'm happy to send them anywhere in the world. So please do comment if you'd like one of those. And I'll give you until the middle of November 2024. Let's say the 15th of November 2024. And then I'll do the prize draw after that. Okay then, I think I really am going to go now though. So do take great care of yourself and keep nice and busy, but not too busy. And I'll be back again very soon to see you. Okay then, bye.